Hi, good afternoon.
Hi. They asked me
We've
to
done
come
the
on.
tough part. We've climbed the stairs.
Yes.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name's David Bader, and I lead Achievers Workforce Institute, which is the team of workforce researchers and data scientists that underpin the product that we develop and also the counsel that we share with our customers. And if you had a chance to catch my colleague Bree Harvey's session earlier on how to motivate beyond money, I'm the person that accompanied Bree Harvey to Los Angeles. So I want to talk today about a lie that we tell ourselves. And the lie is that our organizations have become disconnected just over the last 4 or 5 years as we've adjusted to new modes of working, a global pandemic, social justice issues, and so on. And the reason it's a lie is that the truth is organizations of a certain size have always been disconnected. They've been disconnected by business units, by time zones, by geography, by brands. What's also true is that over the last 4 or 5 years, what we've seen is really a rash of tools that promise to connect us better than ever. And yet, when our institute asked employees how well connected they felt, just 15% of employees said that their organization was doing a good job of connecting them to their peers. Connection matters not just because it's good to have friends at work and our workplaces represent this huge system of support, but what our research shows is that when individuals are connected to the mission of your organization, when they're connected to their manager, when they're connected to peers at work, it gives them confidence that they can survive and thrive through just about anything. And so it's my privilege today to share time with my new best friend, Erin, to talk through a little bit about why connection matters so much and some of the tactical, practical things you can do to make these sorts of connections frequent and meaningful for your people. And so welcome, Erin.
Thank you, David.
I want to talk a little bit about your role. As I said to you earlier, you're a multi-hyphenate. And so I'd like you to talk a little bit about your role at True America and also at USC.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here. My name is Dr. Erin Mack. I'm the Chief People Officer at True America. True America's focus is really on improving people's lives through real estate. So we're in 13 different states, very complex organization. And I would say that my role there is knowing the complexities within the organization. How do we connect people to effectively execute the business plan? So we'll talk more about that. At USC, I have a very special role as an adjunct professor in the Boulevard College. Super sweet and amazing opportunity to always be at the forefront of emerging leaders. I think that when I think about students, they're always excited to hear from the professor. Whereas most of you all may know, when people see or hear HR, they're going in a different direction. So I would say that that role is very special to me, just to be able to frame and form the minds and just hear the ingenuity that they bring to the courses. So very special opportunity.
So I talked a little bit about connection to the mission, manager, and peers being sort of a secret sauce around resilience. Let's use that as our framework for conversation.
Sure.
Let's talk a little bit about True America's mission and what are the things you do to connect people to it.
Absolutely. So we spoke about True America being very complex. And the reason why we have so many complexities is because we do realize that over the last 4 years, there's been this concept of disconnection. And we were one of the organizations that said, you know what, let's invest in so much technology. But through that technology, they were creating barriers. They're actually fracturing our communication. We were realizing that behind the tools that we thought we were supposed to use, we were actually becoming more and more disconnected from the people that we want to hear from. So I think that taking a reverse psychology, or just a reverse methodology to that approach, we say, you know what, let's really try to figure out how we can bring people together. Let's not even think about the technology. Make the technology second, And let's hear from people about best practices within your subgroups, not organizationally, on what is the best form of communication for you and your group. And that built connectivity, not just, I would say, at the larger level. We were able to feel it and see it. Teams were working stronger and faster together. I think that from a connectivity to the mission standpoint, trying to figure out and realize that everyone learns and receives communication differently. So I had a wild idea. I said, let's try out this Lego serious play, because I realized that I wasn't hearing from everyone. So whether you're on Zoom, you're in person, there's always someone who's, let's say, a little silent. And so that person has so much to say. We're missing out on those opportunities. So through different types of training, we said, okay, are there opportunities for people to illustrate their thoughts? Are there opportunities for people to post it and write their thoughts? Are there opportunities for people to build their thoughts through using Lego serious play to say, this is what I'm thinking, but I'm not able to formulate that in a different way? And so through training, through building connectivity, through recognition, we're able to better connect with people.
I love that. The rubber often meets the road in the relationship someone has with their manager. We did a study about a year ago that found that just 28% of employees would recommend their manager. So whether or not you accept the wisdom that people quit their boss rather than the company, that should jump off the page. How are you thinking about manager effectiveness?
I look at it in two ways primarily. I think that we're not investing in people soon enough, and people don't know how to be managers. Sometimes we promote the next person who just stayed, and sometimes that person is not the best person. And sometimes the people that stay the longest shouldn't be there. And so I think we need to be honest with ourselves. And so when it comes to developing emerging leaders or just leaders, I think sometimes we focus on who we like, who we prefer, who we have an affinity to, and we shouldn't do that. We should open up that space for anyone who believes that they're capable of being a leader. And by doing that, everyone has some level of a skill set that is stronger, that impacts the organization. I said I had two for you.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember what was the second one. We'll come back to that if we need to. Yeah.
Thinking of connection and managers, the research that we did showed that there are 4 factors that predict manager effectiveness, and 2 of them have to do with connection. Frequent contact with someone's manager, and also frequent recognition. Can you talk a little bit, you mentioned recognition earlier.
Yes.
Can you talk about the role that recognition plays in the toolkit for your managers?
Absolutely. So I'm actually happy I didn't say number 2, because it's actually better fitted here.
All right.
I think that when people just say thank you, it's too abrupt. And I also think that thank you is a blanket statement, and it really just creates more boundaries between you and the other person on the other end. It's like receiving a performance review that only talks about the last 3 weeks of your performance or the last quarter, which is almost like enraging. And so when you think about how to thank people, you need to be very thoughtful about what you're saying. Why are you thankful? What did it do to the organization? What value did it bring? How does that tie into the mission? Where do you see that person next? It needs to be a lot deeper and a lot more thoughtful. And so I think that spending time as managers with your direct reports, looking at the person for total person versus just looking at what job do you have, you'll have a lot more to be thankful for. You won't be solely positioning or isolating that person in how you perceive them. And so understanding your team, it builds stronger connectivity versus seeing that person for the small, I don't want to call it a small contribution because it's not that, but just looking at them through their title. You've got to look at the whole person.
Part of what you're talking about there is meaning, and what our research shows is that frequency of recognition matters, but meaningful recognition, which you would have heard from Bree Harvey this morning, matters too. Recognition that's personal recognition that's specific, that's impact oriented. I think that's part of what you're talking about.
Absolutely. I also think about, some of the old ways that we've done things. I'm not saying that everything needs to change all the time. There are certain things that are what I would say tried and true. But I do believe that, we've heard the pendulum swing on, do we throw away performance management? Do we keep it? Do we throw away HR? Do we solely outsource it? And I think that we have to look at performance management differently. We have to say, there is a formal way to conduct performance management, but there's also an informal way that impacts the formal way. And so again, going back to simply saying thank you because, or simply giving feedback in the moment when it's fresh, that allows you to build that connectivity with your organization and your manager says, I now am a better manager because I've been able to give feedback more effectively. I can diversify my approach to my team and how I speak to them. But the person on the other end feels two ways. Number one, they're learning how to be a leader because they know what feels good. And then number two, they're saying, I understand why I'm here. I'm better connected to the organization. I want to stay because we do talk about how people leave because of bad managers. Is it just the manager? I think they throw away the whole thing. And I'll tell you why. Because toxic leadership or poor leadership can only exist in a toxic environment. So you think that only you know your leader is terrible? No, everybody knows. And they leave that person there, which stifles your voice. And you can't do that because when you think about, people recognizing bad leaders, it's almost like they're telling you, we've sided, we've chosen a side. And so it's really almost total organization as well.
We talked about connection to the mission, connection to one's manager. The third element in our triumvirate is connection to peers. Talk a little bit about the importance of employees being able to build a network at work.
Absolutely. I think that I'll use my students for an example, and then we'll tie it into True America. I always tell my students at USC, do not get the answers from the people in your department. Do not get all the answers from the people in your team because typically you're paired by your role. And so that isolates your perspective of what's next. So for example, if you're thinking about different technology, you're thinking about something that impacts the organization, your perspective may only be based on how you perceive something. But if you bring in people that are in other departments, other teams, and you start to really build a connection through peers outside of just the people you see in your space every day, you have a deeper understanding of the business and you have a far-reaching impact. And so to me, I think that, if we take that concept and we put it into True America, I always tell people everyone should know what's going on with the business. Every time you turn on the news, anytime you look at cap rates changing, anything, everyone should get the same notification on their phone because we should be dialed into the same thing. We shouldn't say, that doesn't impact me because I do this job. That doesn't impact me because this is how I spend my time. If you work here, it's your issue. And when everyone wins within the organization, we all win. When the organization's not doing well, everyone's not doing well. So that level of connectivity that is implemented at the peer level, I think teaches you that. So I always tell people, we're kind of going off, but you'll see how it comes back. When you think about onboarding someone, and then you say, gosh, every time this person onboards this person, they leave. Or there's something going on. You have to be careful who your cheerleader is in the organization. What are they telling that person? And so, again, when it comes to understanding your peer sect and understanding their connectivity to the organization, I think we have to be very selective about who our peers are, what they're telling people about our organization, make sure that everyone is still very much connected.
I love how you talked about having a strong inner work circle with your team, but the importance of having a network beyond your circle.
Yes.
We were talking earlier about the difference between straight lines between 2 points and those that zigzag and sort of championing the zigzag. You also talked in preparation for our conversation about another conversation with your students at USC that so many of the barriers that exist that prevent us from making those types of connections are made by people. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. I firmly believe, and it's kind of based in what we just spoke about, that a lot of times we feel very comfortable in our own vernacular. And that vernacular could really be attributed to what we do every day. So if we all had a meeting about all things HR, we would all know what ERG meant and all of these acronyms. But then when you're in the larger organizations, sometimes people are like, what are you talking about? Mm-hmm. And so I always tell my students, speak business. Mm-hmm. That's what you need to speak, because that's the universal language. You cannot just speak HR, because when you do that, you create a barrier between you and what you want to communicate and everyone who wants to interact with you. And so that creates further isolation between you and what you want to execute. Some other things that I talk to my students about is just understanding that, when you go into an organization, the profile of an organization is so different based on the culture. You can have a different culture based on different regions or based on different departments within your organization. And so it's so important for students to be astute and be able to recognize that so they can figure out, how can I be effective here? How can I facilitate effective communication channels here so that we can execute the larger business plan? Because one size doesn't fit all. Mm-hmm. You'll see people always throw around this term, best practices. Yeah. But best practices are so different, not just between organizations, but even within an organization. Absolutely. Because of the subcultures. And I talk to my students about the importance of recognizing that.
I love that. Every conversation I've had here today, someone is thinking about tomorrow. It's that time of year where we're probably putting together our 2025 plans. And if not every conversation touched on AI, every other one did. I hear a lot about skills. I hear a lot about empowering frontline managers, training the next level of leaders inside an organization. As you zoom out beyond today and think about tomorrow, what are some of the things you're thinking about the future connected to this idea of connection?
Absolutely. I'm thinking about two things. I think number one, I personally am enthralled by AI. Mm-hmm. I think it is absolutely powerful and I think it's amazing. And I want people to wrap their arms around it too. I want you to think about, years ago when people first came out with like the fax machine or a computer and people thought it was reading their mind. But I'm like, you know what? You've got to lean into technology, because if you don't, your organization is going to get sauced. So when people say they want it two different ways, they say, Aaron, we're not going to have jobs if we, support AI. And I say, it's so funny because I always hear people in my space saying they never have enough time to do their job. Mm-hmm. So which one is it? I think it's just so important to say, you know what? Let me utilize AI for all the things I don't want to spend time doing. I call that the window washing of HR. You want to focus on what's sexy. All the things that are valuable, high contribution, and truly impact your organization. So that's what I'm going to be focused on. Mm-hmm. How to minimize the noise and how to figure out how we can build high-performing teams through the use of AI. Mm-hmm. And that will allow us to connect on a way deeper level. I think through that analogy, we can do something else as well. We can build better leaders. I think that leadership, people say leadership, it starts at the top. I do believe that to a degree. But I do believe that people spend the majority of their time with middle management or with their leaders. And so how do we empower leaders or managers to be leaders? Too far or too often, I see a leader saying, I don't know about that, ask so-and-so, ask so-and-so. And I'm like, hold on, you've been here too long to be saying that you don't even know. Why is that not your job if you're constantly being asked? That means that it's a manager's job. And so we as people leaders need to say, hey, no, your role is the development of people as well. And so we co-share this. Mm-hmm. And so what I'm wanting to do when I look at 2025 is continue to build better middle management within my organization so that they are ready internally to go to the next step. And that's to be an executive leadership.
we talked before, last question, we talked before about our roles as people leaders, but also as parents, and that our job is not to ensure success, but to create conditions so that folks can be successful. How do you think about that?
Okay.
Say words about that. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. So, we were speaking about this today, but I also feel like it transcends into the workplace too. So I'll talk about what that relationship looks like. I have a lot of kids. I just had a baby 2 months ago, 9 weeks ago. And so, thank you. So I had my first little boy, his name is Trip. I have a 3-year-old Poppy. I also have an 11-year-old Piper, and then she'll be 24 in November, Zaria. And so when I know, I hear it. And so what I think about is I deeply have the opportunity to watch my children grow. They're so far apart to a degree that they feel like each of them are my only child. So I've had the opportunity to see what works, what doesn't work, the same way we think about an organization or people. And I've realized that as a parent, I love all of my kids deeply, but I realize that they're functioning within their own parallel. All my job is to do is to create an environment where they can thrive, right? It's not to say, you're gonna grow up and be this, because that's what I want. I think it's important that the child decide what it is that they want to do, who they want to be based on what their life goals are, not living my dream. My job is to say, here are the tools, here's the environment, and I'm here to be a coach to you because I want you to be healthy, I want you to be happy in whatever it is that you do. My husband, for example, said, Erin, why are we sitting in the private school when one of them just wants to be a firefighter? I said, just wants to be a firefighter? This is a very important job. I would assume that someone with a job like that woke up every morning, was excited to do that job, because there's a lot of that we're not going to do. And so I think that when we think about people in our organization, it's not telling them how to do it. That's micromanaging. It's saying, hey, here are the tools, the conditions, and the resources, and this is what we want to achieve. Let me take a step back and see what are you going to do to surprise me? I want to see your ingenuity. I don't want to micromanage it to the fact where I'm just hiring drones. You're never going to get anywhere if you just have a carbon copy of the same person. I want to see something different. And so that's why I think it's important to just create a safe environment. You heard from the previous speaker, the importance of psychological safety. That's the importance of letting someone mess up a little bit and then come back and do it right. It's the same thing how we would teach a child. And so a lot of the skills that we have, whether it's in people, parenting, whatever, we can apply to the workplace.
I love it. You've connected all the dots for me, and I'm sure everyone's going to want to connect with you. Thank you very much, Erin.
Absolutely. Thank you.